technology here. Faculty, friends, family, and most importantly, graduates. You've made it. This is the big day. You've reached the finish line. But not really. You've heard graduation speakers around high schools and colleges for many, many years say that this is just the beginning. And in a sense that's very true, because you're moving to the next place in your life. So I look at more of a closing of one chapter and the opening of another door and taking you to the next place in your life. And to put it kind of in social media modern terms, as we'll find out next week, a week from today, when Mark Zuckerberg pulls the lever on what is known as that new Facebook timeline, you'll find that March 24th, 2012 is really nothing more than a dot on a timeline. They'll call it a milestone on that day, and it certainly is when you take into consideration the vastness of our universe, but even to call it a dot is perhaps overstating it from the universal perspective. One of the things that social media, particularly Facebook, has taught us over time is that even though there are 700 million users in that social media format today, each and every one of us has created what we would refer to as our own little center of the universe. So I want to share with you what you've completed in terms of their educational requirements at Colorado Technical University. Is really not that important in the grand scheme of things of the universe. And yet, because we are our own universe, it is absolutely one of the most important accomplishments that you have ever achieved in all of your life. And once again, I want to say congratulations to each and every one of you for that. I am one who does not believe there are ever any accidents. When you think about it, every decision that you've ever made in your entire life has led you to be here in this room today. Every single decision has led you here. It might have been something as simple as maybe picking up a magazine and reading an article about someone who inspired you to follow the path that you're following at CTU, resulting in your graduation. But let's play what if for just a minute. What if you hadn't read that article? What if you didn't hear about that scholarship opportunity? Or what if you happen to be driving down the road and you look to the left instead of the right and missed the billboard that talked about Colorado Technical University? How would it be different today? Well, the good news is it can't be different, because you're here in this very room today. But what did happen along your path to graduation today is that laid at your feet along that pathway were many, many obstacles. And each one of them is clearly labeled, and it says why you can't. You probably heard those words more than once in the years that you've been attending this university. Was it that someone who may have said that didn't want you to succeed? I think not. Most likely what happened is someone saw you going somewhere and you were going to leave them behind. And so they chose to hang on to you and give you every excuse possible as to why you can't. A good friend of mine in the restaurant business told me a story about lobsters. By the way, he was waiting on tables one day, and a customer walked in and he said, excuse me, sir, do you have any lobster tails? And he said, why, yes. Once upon a time, there was this lobster.
Oh.
But what they'll tell you in the restaurant business about lobsters is if you want to keep them in their container as one lobster, you've got to put a lid on it. The reason that you have to put a lid on that container is because the lobster will get out and move on to something else, what they believe perhaps is something better. If you have two lobsters, it's very simple. You can leave the lid off, because as each one of the lobsters tries to escape, the other one will reach up and pull them back down. And it doesn't matter which lobster is climbing out. The other one is always going to pull them back down. So what that lobster story tells us is something that I learned in a great book that I read recently called The Oz Principle. Now that's not Dr. Oz. That's literally the Wizard of Oz. It is based on the story written by L. Frank Baum. Not the movie, but the actual story of the Wizard of Oz. It's a bestseller about organizational and individual accountability. And in that book, it talks about living above the line or living below the line. And below the line is where victimization lives.